Hello, everyone, and welcome back to KSI Morning Brief, your daily dose of updates on world news and markets. I'm Mashood, and joining with me today is Anjana and Imad. To begin with, global markets. The stock market finished sharply high on Tuesday, climbing over 2% as Wall Street continued to be optimistic about a reopening of the economy and a potential coronavirus vaccine. The Dow 30 was up by 2.17%, the S&P 500 was up by 1.23%, and the Nasdaq 100 was down by 0.26%. Looking at Europe, the Euro Stoxx 50 was up by 0.94% and DAX was up by 1% and the FTSE 100 was up by 1.24%. The main reason for the good performance in the market was that travel companies led European stocks higher as the global markets rallied. To be specific, Touristic Union International surged 35% as the London-listed German-headquartered travel operator plans to resume flights at the end of June. It is the largest leisure, travel and tourism company in the world, and it owns travel agencies, hotels, airlines, cruise ships, and retail stores. Looking at Asia, the Hang Seng Index completes its best gain in a week compared to Friday's as more businesses reopen. The Japanese stock space rally with more than 2% gain after government ends virus emergency measures. US, Japan, and Hong Kong economies are expected to reopen in early June. Looking at commodities, oil futures traded higher Tuesday, encouraged by continued cuts in crude production and a pickup in demand as the pandemic related lockdowns ease around the world. If you look at currencies, the euro against the USD was slightly weakened by 0.03%, and the USD against the yen was slightly weakened by 0.11%, and the pound against the USD down by 0.08%. Looking at China, in the currencies across China and in some of their second homes in Asia, rich Chinese are looking at acquiring luxury homes, in many cases to guard their wealth against anticipated inflation and a weakening yuan. The quick move had led to an upmarket in housing prices in China, while at the same time offering some support for Asian property markets hit hard by the pandemic. Next, focusing on an important graph in the United States, the Treasury issuance versus the Fed Treasury security purchases. Comparing data during the past few months, it's evident that changes are being made to address highly unusual disruptions in the Treasury financing markets. Fed's 75 billion per day buying has changed to less than $10 billion per day. Over the past 2 months, Fed has bought $1,500 billion and 493 billion US dollars has been issued. The Treasury expects to issue $3,000 between April to June. According to analysts in Bernstein, this is likely to remove cash from the system, tightening liquidity unless the Fed chooses to step up purchases again. This is a risk for the market, although our work shows that historically there's a weak relationship between market direction and supply of liquidity. Looking at Singapore, the Singapore's GDP is expected to shrink between 4 and 7% this year, down from the previous projected range of a contraction between 1 and 4%, the Ministry of Trade and Industry said. The last time Singapore posted a full year contraction was during the dot-com bust in 2001, and when growth fell by 1.1%, its worst recession thus far happened during the Asian financial crisis in 1998. The economy shrank by 2.2% then. Looking at the performance of different sectors in the Q1, manufacturing jumped by 6.6%, accommodation and food services plunged 23.8%, transportation and storage fell 8.1%, finance and insurance rose by 8% from last year. Looking at the airline industry, which was hit hard by the pandemic, followed by the Colombia-based Avianca, LATAM is the second major airline in the region to file for bankruptcy in the month of May. LATAM listed assets and liabilities in the range of $10 billion and $50 billion, according to a filing with the US Bankruptcy Court. The US carrier Delta Airlines Inc. is the biggest shareholder in LATAM, having last year paid $1.9 billion for a 20% stake during the better times for the airlines. The Chapter 11 petition allows LATAM to keep operating while the Chilean courier works out a plan to pay creditors and turn around the business. Next on Global News, we have Anjana to bring you some latest updates.
Thank you, Mashood. So looking at the international news, the billionaire entrepreneur Elon Musk's record company SpaceX is just hours away from becoming the first ever commercial entity to launch humans into orbit and then take them to the International Space Station. It is expected to launch the United States into a new commercial era of space flight. Looking at Europe, over the weekend, a group of fiscally conservative nations known as the Frugal Four, Austria, the Netherlands, Sweden, and Denmark, rejected a compromise struck by Germany and France, the two largest economies in Europe. The holdouts insist that member states most affected by the COVID-19 crisis should be offered loans and not grants. Meanwhile, Nissan and Renault scrapped plans for full merger. Nissan has long resisted Renault's proposal for a full-blown merger as executives felt that the French carmaker was not paying its fair share for the engineering work it did in Japan. Nissan and Renault are each planning substantial restructuring and cost cuts that could affect tens of thousands of jobs, with the Japanese company to announce its measures on 28th and its French partner likely to follow the next day. More news from Europe. The British entrepreneur Richard Branson's Virgin Orbit has failed in its first test launch of a rocket carried aloft by a Boeing 747 and released over the Pacific Ocean off the coast of Southern California. Looking at Asia, China on Tuesday urged Canada to immediately release the chief financial officer of Chinese technological company Huawei and allow her to return back home safely. He was arrested in 2018 at Vancouver International Airport at the request of the United States, which is seeking her extradition on 4 charges. However, both the CFO and the Huawei company have repeatedly denied any wrongdoings. That's it from World News. Imad is waiting on the other side to give you updates on COVID-19. Imad, what do you?
Looking at the total cases globally, it surpassed about 5.4 million, with daily new cases over 88,000, with recoveries over 2.2 million, and fatalities over 349,000. Coming to Sri Lanka, the total cases are at 1,317, with daily new cases of 135, recoveries of 712, and 10 fatalities. On developments on vaccine, after halting trials of hydrochloroquine over safety fears, WHO says a safety team will review data on hydrochloroquine. US biotechnology company Novavax has become the latest to announce that it has started human trials. The Indian Council of Medical Research told news agency that human trials of its COVID-19 vaccine might begin in 6 months. Further on developments on vaccine, Thailand has entered the race with its Thai mRNA. Further news on developments of vaccine, a Japanese biopharma venture said it would begin clinical trials for its DNA vaccine in July. On other news, Australia collaborates with South Korea on the vaccine development. Looking at the world updates, Russian President Putin says Russia has passed the peak. In other news, a global campaign to fund COVID-19 vaccines has raised over 10.4 billion US dollars. In other news, WHO warns the immediate second peak after countries has eased their lockdowns. In other news, WHO considers Americas as the new epicenter for coronavirus. That's it for today's updates. Join us again at 8:30 tomorrow for more updates. Thanks for joining us. Stay safe, take care, and goodbye.